Hello and welcome. I'm Rosemary Hua, Global Head of Retail and CPG at Snowflake. As we enter what we hope is the back half of the pandemic, it's incredible to see how different our industry looks compared to this time last year. In the post-COVID world, having a solid data strategy is now a matter of survival for retailers and consumer product companies. The most advanced companies are using data to flex with the needs of consumers and the demands of their organizations. The majority of the industry is struggling to simply access insight-rich data, much less generate value from it. This is exactly why more retailers, CPGs, and retail data service companies are joining Snowflake's Data Cloud to help their organizations make that jump into rich merchandising and customer insights. By choosing to be part of this global data network, companies are tapping into massive volumes of live data generated by their businesses, consumers, partners, and data providers within and beyond the retail and CPG industries. This is game-changing, particularly for CPG manufacturers looking for new ways to invest in external data and develop consumer-level insights. A new dynamic is emerging from this movement to the data cloud: the rise of data-obsessed organizations. By data-obsessed, I mean that these companies are constantly sourcing massive amounts of diverse data from the data cloud and are powering multiple initiatives across their business with insights generated by that data. As an example, some of our retail and CPG customers are building 360-degree views of their customers by using Snowflake to consolidate and enhance their customer information with third-party consumer insights and demographic data. By using attribution data and similar sources accessed through the data cloud, they've found new ways to deliver personalized, omni-channel engagements to their customers and optimize their pricing and promotional strategies on the fly. The data cloud is also enabling these companies to improve their operations with faster access to granular data across their organizations, resulting in better merchandise planning decisions, inventory management, and demand forecasting. And in terms of preparing for future disruptions to their businesses, retailers are gaining better visibility into their supply chains by using the data cloud to exchange logistics data with suppliers and leveraging cross-industry data from the data marketplace, such as weather and COVID-19 insights. The data cloud is empowering these data-obsessed companies to seize profitable opportunities beyond their existing revenue streams. It's making it easier for retailers in particular to become non-traditional data providers and monetize the rich transactional data that is generated by their businesses. As more companies use the data cloud to create and monetize their own data products, this global network of data will continue to grow and bridge the critical insight gaps within retail and CPG partnerships that we see today. Now we're going to hear from a few of our most data-obsessed customers who are driving their business to new heights with the data cloud. Let's chat first with Andy Burke, Associate Director of IT and Analytics at Kraft Heinz, to learn how his team is powering best-in-class CPG analytics with Snowflake. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us here today. Maybe we could start with some introductions for the audience. If you could describe what your role is at Kraft Heinz, that would be great.
So I work within an analytics COE at Kraft Heinz, and we're responsible for a couple of different things. One is the tools and platforms that all of our analysts use. The second is enterprise data engineering within the sales and marketing space. And finally, I'm responsible for organizational enablement, so the training of people to use the tools and the data to build analytics solutions.
If you could give us a little bit of background into the tech stack that you inherited. I understand, the kind of journey from going from what you inherited over to where we are today. If you could shed some light on where you all came from and where you are today, that would be great.
Over the past few years, we've been really growing an analytics community at Kraft Heinz. So we have about 800 people, either data analysts, data engineers, or data scientists working in the environment. And we had a couple of different tools for them to leverage. One was an SAP HANA environment. This was largely for operational reports. Second was a Hadoop data lake. This was where we would store our larger historical information or our external data assets. And then there was lots of data in kind of the source system applications or even on people's laptops. So as you can imagine, as this analytics community was growing, our platforms were struggling to keep pace. And we realized that we really needed to take the next step with our data platform journey.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of kind of industry trends and those business problems that you face, what were those obstacles facing Kraft Heinz as you kind of took this role at the company?
Well, certainly, we were looking for our teams to be able to build cross-functional or shared data across different functions. And what we were seeing was because the data was sitting in different locations, there was a lot of friction to this. We were also generating and building a community at Kraft Heinz of analytics professionals, and we were limiting the network effects of them working together because we were encouraging them to go into different systems. Finally, as you can imagine, when you're loading these traditional systems with a lot more users, performance was going down. So we're almost punished them from using these disparate systems by reducing performance over time.
And I also want to talk a little bit about kind of the data sources that are helping, because I think you guys worked a lot on the internal data, but also let's talk a little bit about the external data sources coming from the marketplace and exchange as well.
So as a CPG, obviously, a lot of our most important data sets are actually external to us. So how our customers are interacting with the consumers, and indeed what consumers are purchasing or eating themselves. So getting data from external sources and pulling it in-house is really important for us. If I look at what we've done to date in terms of data sharing and the data marketplace, I'd really break it down into three different categories. The first would be transactional data, so how the business is performing. An example of this is we've worked with Atheon and their SKU track solution to pull in customer inventory levels. This is important for our logistics team so they can marry that up with our internal SAP data to understand the health of the network. The second component would be insights or new insights. And this is where we can work with partners that have unique capabilities, either data that we don't have or IP on the models to improve the analysis we can perform. So we're currently working with Prevedere where we can send them our data and they're able to run it through their economic metric models to provide us more accurate forecast levels.
Right.
Finally, I would say is kind of reference data or understanding the market conditions around us. The first data set that we actually got through a data share was the Johns Hopkins COVID-19 data. That was critical for us this time last year. As we were trying to understand, we were working round the clock to keep the shelves stocked, and we were really trying to understand what demand would be. And the data share enabled us to marry that information and put it right next to where our analysts were pulling other data so they could incorporate it within their business routines very easily.
Yeah, and just following up on that last point around kind of COVID data, if you could dive a little bit deeper there. I mean, what was that impact of the pandemic on the business, and also what did that data help you to kind of see, and what were the insights for the business that came out of that COVID data set?
So obviously, the COVID pandemic and was a big unknown for everyone and definitely changed shopping behaviors. So we were trying to work with our customers to understand what demand would be or what were the products that were most necessary to ship to keep the consumer kind of baskets full. So using the COVID-19 data, we were trying to understand trends or where there would be demand spikes so that we could adjust our logistics network to try and service the customers that would be in most need. It was all about trying to understand the health of the network and seeing where we should send the products.
And moving from this past year of the pandemic and into the future, what does that future look like for Kraft Heinz? What are the initiatives that you're most looking forward to coming up?
So we've certainly put Snowflake at the center of our data architecture. So we're looking for it to be the central location where analysts and applications can come to access data and build solutions. But I think bigger than that, what Snowflake gives us in terms of capabilities is also the capability to be a data provider. And what we're looking at is how can we support our customers better by sharing data, because often we're working on the similar sort of problems. So how to improve efficiency across our supply chain network, or how do we improve forecast accuracy? And Snowflake, with a very little lift from our end, will enable us to share data with them in a safe and secure way. And this is what really excites me over the coming years.
I want to talk a little bit about data sharing and the impact that it had on Kraft Heinz. What is your use of that technology? Do you use it, and how deeply do you use it? And what was the big difference that it made if you are leveraging it today?
We had a very rapid growth in terms of our analytics community, and our data engineers were inundated with requests. This made it very difficult for them to work on data assets which didn't have an immediate business value. There was always something of a higher priority. What the data marketplace has enabled us to do is, without a heavy lift from a data engineering team perspective, is actually unlock data for trials for our data science teams in the location they work today. So that's really changed the dynamic, where we can actually proactively go out to the teams and say, hey, what data would you like to experiment with, rather than waiting for it to come across my desk or be prioritized in any other way. And I think this is a big difference in terms of the dynamics and opportunity for Kraft Heinz, and working with kind of new or kind of different data sets than we had before.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense, and unlocks a lot of opportunities for not only inventory placement, but also the customer side of things as well. And given that Kraft is aggregating a lot of data for the customer themselves, what are the big differences that you see moving forward that you can do with customer data and with those data sources coming in the marketplace and also the exchange? Like, what does that kind of unlock for you?
The biggest difference, because we were able to get customer data before, but now we're able to get it faster and more efficiently. So I think it really enables us to scale at a bigger rate than we could before. It also enables us to build models which actually require more frequent data inputs to increase the accuracy or to change how they're operating. And through the data marketplace, we're actually able to achieve this. So I think that's kind of in the near term really where we see the biggest opportunity.
Thank you so much, Andy, for everything. And thank you for joining us here today. I think that the audience is going to take away some really great insights from Kraft and how you guys are using Snowflake.
Brilliant. Good to speak to you again, Rose.
Yes, good to see you. Last week, I had the opportunity to speak with another data-obsessed company, Albertsons. As a retailer who is fully embracing the data cloud to deliver personalized customer experiences. Let's take a look. Hello, everyone. Today we have Albertsons joining us for our fireside chat. Anuj, if you could give a quick introduction of yourself to our audience, that would be great.
Thank you, Rose. Glad to be here. I am the Chief Information Officer and EVP for Albertsons Companies, and have been in this role for the last 5 years. And as part of that, I manage all the technology functions, from the infrastructure and architecture to security to all the business applications. And I also run payments for Albertsons.
It's so great to have you here. I wanted to get started with the landscape at Albertsons. How has Albertsons' approach to data changed over time, and what does that data infrastructure look like? I'm curious to hear about your strategy.
Data at Albertsons has always been somewhat of our lifeblood, as we manage the entire cycle of getting the product from the CPGs and farmers through the supply chain to the stores to the customer. So it is really a common thread. But it has changed in a fairly significant, and changing, I might add, in a very significant way. And we are moving from a more descriptive, reactive, to tell us what happened, to what is now going to be a lot more predictive. And that kind of is changing the game. And the game that changes is really the precision of what the data can enable, the speed of data that can come to bear, the self-learning, which is the machine learning part. So that makes it a totally, I think, a new ballgame, and a range of opportunities open up that are just tremendous.
I've loved seeing how Albertsons has totally digitally evolved and adapted to the pandemic. What role did data play there, and how were you able to survive and thrive through the pandemic time at Albertsons?
As you could imagine, we've been rather busy over the last year during this pandemic. But it has been a time of exciting opportunity too, as we have scaled especially our digital business almost 3x. But we've accelerated many of our investments, but specifically for data. And what we realize is we're getting a lot more value of all the data footprint, and we're not only focusing on getting the core platform stood up on Snowflake, which is now up and running, but also how we are using it. We're working on both fronts, And both have been very, very rewarding and successful, and a lot more to come.
And when we think about the customer experience and personalizing that experience, what role has data and Snowflake played in the customer side of things or the transactions level of that customer data? And how do you see the strategy of data coming together for Albertsons? What does that initiative look like?
We at Albertsons are in this journey of moving from a transaction-based model where customers come shop the products they need to a more deeper relationship model where we provide unique services and create a really a personalized experience for them. So the foundation of that personalized experience is data. Data about the customer and how can data help fashion that experience. But it's not only the customer experience that has to be fashioned, it is the entire chain then has to get fashioned. So the product that the assortment that we provide in our website, that we provide in even in our stores, the promotion capabilities that we provide, how we re-engineer the supply chain to make sure that the product is there when the customer needs it and what the customer needs and where they need it, all those pieces are coming together, and that's where data is so critical. And as I said, the both the precision and the timing of the data is really important.
Absolutely. And on the timing of data and that data delivery method and mechanism, how is that collaborative nature working between Albertsons and your suppliers, and then, of course, Albertsons and the third-party data providers that bring data to you? How is that, data collaboration happening either on Snowflake or on the proprietary systems that you've built at Albertsons?
That whole ecosystem of data sharing, I think, is on the cusp of a big breakthrough change. In the past, the idea has been that, hey, the data that we have, we use for our business, and then we would look to monetize the data, or someone would say, hey, this data is very valuable. How might we get more insights from it? But the way it is transitioning is what you refer to is the new ecosystem of data sharing is how do we provide a better experience using the data? So, for example, uh, we do forecasting for and have done that demand forecasting for a long time. But then, if you think about now the signal or demand forecast, if I can now share with the CPG a provider, that company can also get sharper about their product to us. So that and if I dial back, even in how they manufacture, how they source, so the demand signal sharing is not only of value to Albertson, is very valuable to CPG, and ultimately is really valuable to the customer because we'll have the product in time, in stock when the customer wants to shop it, whether digitally or in the store. So this sharing of data is really elevating the whole performance of the entire ecosystem of from the suppliers to the retailers, and that is very exciting. And ultimately, the customer wins because she's getting the right product at the right time in a personalized experience that we could deliver. Let me give you some sense of how we see this unfold. The first aspect I really believe is the, not only the data, but the whole ecosystem is going to get far more intelligent. And it'll get intelligent because it'll be self learning, it'll be intelligent because it is more precise, it'll be intelligent because it is more real time. So it's more timely. So we are investing certainly in a big way in creating that ecosystem, and that means we have the core platform, and Snowflake has been a great partner for that. But behind that, or in front of that, we have the whole business community and the data science community that we are creating, which will allow to leverage that. In fact, we just announced last month that we are hiring Daniel Kropp as a chief data officer who will lead a lot of those efforts. We are also modernizing the whole app stack, and we'll be in the public cloud pretty much by June of next year. We'll be shutting down our data centers to provide the same level of agility that we could provide in the data front. And that, I think, will set us up for really moving at the speed and providing to our customers an experience which we believe will be differentiated and create a lot of value for them as well as for all our stakeholders.
Thanks so much, Anuj. We really appreciate Albertsons joining us here at Snowflake, and we really look forward to that continued partnership. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Rose. Delighted to be here. And once again, a shout out to the Snowflake team for helping us build this terrific capability and being an ongoing partner as we build greater value for our business and our customers in the future. So thanks.
Our final speaker today is Dustin Pierce, VP of Infrastructure at Instacart. They've been on the bleeding edge of using Snowflake to inform grocery catalog predictions and drive real-time insight into consumer demand. Thanks so much, Dustin, for joining me today. I was hoping we could start with a quick introduction for the audience, for you to talk a little bit about your role at Instacart and what you all are hoping to achieve.
My name is Dustin Pierce. I am the Vice President of Engineering at Instacart, and I cover infrastructure. And that role is a little unique for me in the sense that it covers, data engineering, cloud engineering, platform security, GRC, developer productivity. So it's a very broad charter. And I think that what's interesting to me about Instacart is that, as a multi-sided marketplace, we're organized around all of these different business capabilities. We have to create a great shopping experience. We have to give visibility and control to our advertisers. We have to kind of build a catalog from 50,000 stores from across North America. And I think that all of those things combined means that each kind of area that we're organized around has a lot of agency. And I think in many ways, having been through a lot of these kind of younger, fast growing companies, it's the model to be competitive these days and to go as fast as you need to go.
And, speaking about kind of younger, faster growing companies and also, how to survive in the present day, and wanting to talk a little bit about COVID and how that's impacted Instacart. Can you talk a little bit about that business impact from the pandemic? And then we'll also dive a little bit into the data behind that as well.
We experienced 5 years of growth in 5 weeks. We were doubling about every 4 days. And, when it's unlike any kind of growth I've seen before, and I've been at some of the fastest growing companies ever, right? If you think about, how our business works, it's a marketplace and we're trying to match up customers' needs with, availability for shoppers at the stores that are our partners. And all of a sudden, overnight, the demand for online or e-commerce based grocery shopping just went to infinity.
Right.
For us, I think it was exciting. It was very hard. We can talk a little bit about how systems like Snowflake, where we have a service versus our internal databases and the difference between those two systems and what we experience, because there's a lot of pain for our own databases to try to scale. How do you run a business at 10 times the speed when everybody is adapting? It was just a real challenge.
Yeah. And digging into that, you talked a little bit about on-time availability, right? The Instacart shoppers are the ones sitting on their couch, whereas the shopper in the store is competing against the in-person shopper in the brick and mortar store. Let's talk a little bit about that. How did Snowflake and the data infrastructure that you had, how were you able to deliver that kind of real-time source of truth on inventory and real-time availability?
It's really interesting because we're also dealing with 50,000 stores across North America. None of these stores are really driven by, optic learning, kind of real-time inventory management. These are grocery stores, right? And so we do get availability data from most of them once a day, sometimes intra-day. But we had to develop over years of data and purchasing patterns, essentially machine learning models that have learned how to predict availability based on the updates that we get from grocers whenever we're able to get them, and then based on the purchasing patterns that we see. And certainly during COVID, a lot of those models had to be rapidly retrained with data. So having the data flowing in real time and retraining our models to try to predict what was in those stores, or more importantly, what wasn't in those stores, what was Costco out of, was really important for our customer experience. And there was a lot of panic buying, but we've seen things stabilize and the supply chains have stabilized and the purchasing patterns have changed, but stabilized in ways that we've updated our models and are much more likely to predict that the thing you order, the shopper will find.
Yeah, definitely. And digging a little bit into that as well on those models and your data science practice. How does, data and also the data cloud, third-party data, second-party data that comes into Instacart, how does that augmented world of data help with Instacart's data science and analytics practice?
The federation and division of Instacart is important because each group is working very fast with their own data sets, right? And if I had a centralized system that didn't really federate the control and access and the ability to kind of operate on that data, it would slow everybody down because let's say I have a centralized data engineering team and you have to kind of call them to get a warehouse or call them to do a schema change. And so I think that, when you look at data science, what's interesting is that it is not, a bunch of mathematicians in a lab. They are embedded in the product teams and they sit right with the product teams and they're all working with data on a day-to-day basis. And so what you have to imagine is the sources of this data, whether it's the transactions or the interface or the customer experience, are constantly under change.
Right.
And so, it's a very large kind of governance problem. It's a definition problem. And I think that's a big part of what our data science team is tackling on a day-to-day basis.
Totally. And getting into that collaboration, I think Instacart is really at the center of a lot of data collaboration that happens with retailers and CPGs. What is the foundation that you've built that kind of helps with that data collaboration with those other parties like retailers and CPGs that work with Instacart?
I think that for us, the important thing is how do we help retailers both improve their top line and their bottom line, improve their margins. Grocery is a notoriously low margin business. So when we have purchase patterns from across North America, we can tell you what works and what doesn't work. We can tell you what consumers want to buy and what they don't want to buy. We can tell you what has margin and what doesn't. And so we're finding that having access to that data about their customers, the retailers, are really appreciative of our integration with their system. So we send them the data about all of the shopping that happens for their stores. Same thing with CPGs. CPGs are really, are fascinated by our platform because they've never been able to do, click-through attribution e-commerce.
Yes.
Coca-Cola or whatever, these CPG brands, they do placements in movie ads or billboards, but they've never been able to do this type of e-commerce advertising. And now they can, and it's very data-driven, it's automated, and they have total control and visibility, and they demand it too. And for the retailers, not just how are they gaining kind of business by being in the marketplace, but also how are they gaining a competitive advantage by getting data back from the marketplace? Makes them sticky, makes them, more inclined to love being part of the network, right?
I wanted to dig in a little bit about the scaling during the pandemic and how, your systems had to scale with you. How did that go and what was it like working with Snowflake during that time?
Scale problems are usually rooted at the data layer. And, we had this kind of historic scale moment at the onslaught of the COVID crisis. And for us, there was really two different stories. There was the story about Snowflake and how was it adapting to this surge. And there was a story of our transactional databases. And what was really interesting and really helpful for us is that the story on the Snowflake side was very short. We didn't have to do anything. It just absorbed all of that growth. 5 years of growth in 5 weeks, 10x the business. On the transactional side of the databases, this is what we would have done if we had not used a service like Snowflake, is we had SREs and engineers up all night, every single night, trying to figure out what are we going to do about these overflowing databases? How do we partition them? How do we keep this service up and available so that we can deliver food to people across the country? I'm really proud of what our team was able to do, but I'm also very excited and very happy and pleased as a customer of Snowflake that was like one less thing that I had to re-architect through this surge.
Yeah, that's awesome and super exciting. And kind of looking forward into the future of Snowflake and Instacart and our partnership together, kind of what are you looking forward to in those future initiatives coming up?
I find that data is central to everything we do, and it's not just product or engineering, it's across the entire company. And so innovation is happening across the board. And I think that a couple of areas that excite me is on the retailer front. I really feel like the leveraging of years of purchasing patterns and inventory patterns from tens of thousands, like 50,000 stores across North America really helps us start to understand, well, what does it mean to run a grocery store efficiently? And how do you increase the top line or improve the margin, right? And that's a very important thing in the grocery business. And I believe that our data scientists are going to be making recommendations to our retail partners that make them that give them a competitive advantage.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and everything that you shared today, I think, is going to be enormously helpful to everyone who is listening. So I want to thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us today. And I'm very excited for our partnership, and hopefully it continues just as robust as it does today. So thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining our session today. I hope you're as inspired as I am to hear from these companies who saw opportunity in adversity and are helping their business and customers thrive with the help of the Data Cloud. I encourage you to learn more about Snowflake's platform and how it enables the Data Cloud by exploring the rest of our summit sessions. Thank you and enjoy.